So I, Tommy Joe Moore, went to teach in a war zone. Sounds a bit mental, but I did it. So some of you might have seen that I've very recently come back from the Ukraine. And I have to say, what a phenomenal, proud warrior people that they are. And it was absolutely my honour and my privilege to help do what little I can to make their lives a little bit easier by providing some training. Now, it's a bit nuts, the story, how this come back. So I'm good friends with a chap named Brett McKenzie. Brett McKenzie is a former infantry soldier, and he also runs a martial arts club. And with Brett, for the past number of years, I've been learning things like shooting and fieldcraft and all sorts of cool kind of militaristic skill sets. And then Brett messages me out of the blue, and he says, do you fancy coming to Ukraine? They might have need of some of our training. And it transpires that for many units out there, and the one in question that we went to see, one of their training deficits was they don't get much time looking at close quarter combat. And by close quarter combat, I mean everything from unarmed to blade to pistol to close range rifle work. And it's just something which they don't get a huge amount of instruction in or support with. Now, when I was asked to do this, it was very, very exciting. But I'll also tell you this, it's fucking terrifying because it's a war zone. And it's not just a war zone. Because for most people in the Western world, even if they have been to or taught in war zones, we're normally the big side. The side with the helicopters, the sides with the planes, the sides with the intelligence. And the bad guys live in caves and fire sporadic rockets and leave IEDs, but disproportionate level of strength and benefit on the side of the good guys. Yeah. So for most people that have trained in the Western world, be that privately or be that in the military in any other context, they've been on the side of the big army with the big technology and really, the highest probability of success. In Ukraine, the Ukrainians are the small side, the side with, in many ways, the least technology, the least air power, in some ways, the least intelligence. Now, obviously, Ukraine is doing phenomenal things, and it's being supported in many ways. But Russia is huge. Russia is a superpower. Russia is a country that all countries are a bit scared of. So going to the Ukraine was scary because Russians are scary dudes. They are unpredictable. They are well equipped. They are well armed. They're crazy. But I thought to myself, and I felt, when I thought about, it's a bit too dangerous, maybe I should not do this one, I felt a sense of shame. Like, who am I to have this choice? Who am I to have this choice? They have no choice. Yep. I have some choice. And I felt a sense of shame and cowardice that I would worry about it, in that there are people around the world fighting for their freedom and fighting for their civil liberties. And many of these people aren't inclined in that way. Many of these people were software developers and programmers, and they worked in cafes and pubs and bars and cinemas. They're not necessarily militaristic people. They're normal people thrust into a situation which is horrible. But they have no choice. And the more I thought about it, I thought, I need to go do this because otherwise I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And so I said yes, and it took much convincing and much cajoling of my partner and my family. And obviously, it took a lot of time to research and to look into it and see which areas are somewhat safer than others. So, I did put my due diligence in, but I felt like I've got some skills to share. I've got people that need those skills more than anything in the world, really. They need skills and they need support. And it's something that I need to and should do. So we went. And it's hard to sum up in a video what it's like. But I'll tell you this, it's not like going on holiday. Moving yourself into a country at war with a superpower is not like flying to Tenerife. There is a lot of faff, a lot of logistics involved. Ukraine is a huge country. And hardly anyone speaks English. You know, you can go to Italy, you can go to Spain, you can go to Thailand, you go to Japan. You can get yourself through with a bit of pointing and a bit of pidgin English. Much of Ukraine, you got nothing. You got nothing. The alphabet looks nothing like your alphabet. The words sound nothing like your words. You know, you can fudge your way through a bit of Italian or Spanish. Yeah, you can get your way through there, but it's an entirely alien world. And people are tired, and people have been at war, and they have little time for your flim-flam. You know, it's not exactly a welcoming environment to tourists, although I imagine in peacetime it would be a wonderful environment for tourists. But right now, you know, it's hard to get to. But we had some people, some fixers that helped us get there and make arrangements, and they're all volunteers, and they all work really hard. The charity we went through, Vans Without Borders, you know, they go right to the front lines, carrying all manner of medical and humanitarian aid. They go at the pointy end to deliver what is needed most. And so, liaising with Jack from Vans Without Borders and a number of other guys and volunteers, we managed to get ourselves onto the base in Ukraine, military base. And obviously, military base, again, it's not like you kind of inducting yourself into a large hotel. It's a fully functioning, working at war base. You know, there are people with jobs to do, so you have to find your way through it a little bit. And we find ourselves in a block, and Brett and I were sharing a very, very, very Slavic room. Small beds, very strange tiger patterned sheets, little heater, very little instructions as to what else and what next. We managed to find ourselves training a Special Forces reconnaissance group, which was fantastic. And there's lots of foreigners in country teaching different aspects of the Ukrainian military, and vice versa, because some of those guys are hugely experienced now, more experienced than anyone in the world in fighting a first world tier 1 power. So, you know, whilst it sounds like there's lots of aid coming in, there's also lots and lots of experience and intelligence on the Ukrainian side. So, we get there and we find out that we're teaching a reconnaissance unit, and we find ourselves essentially planning a curriculum based on where skill deficits might be. And so for my part, I primarily taught the unarmed sections. So hand-to-hand combat, wearing all of your gear. And I'll move on to that a little bit later. Use of the knife and bladed weapons. And then Brett, who went with me, he predominantly taught the use of combat pistol, so use of pistol in close range, and also the use of the rifle at close range. So it was that's our kind of a curriculum. Close quarters combat was our kind of material base. I had my areas of expertise and Brett had his, and we kind of merged those things together for them. And we spent time with the commanders kind of segmenting skill sets and needs and priorities and all that stuff. First thing you got to understand is that in Ukraine, they're still reeling from the fact they're fighting a first world superpower that tried to crush their capital to the ground. Yeah. So you got to understand that it's not like a nicely segmented, nicely ordered military. You know, people have all manner of kit and gear, different boots, different uniforms, different armor, different guns. You know, this was a reconnaissance unit, and some of the things they're packing were the loudest, longest, strangest weapons for that particular task. But every soldier has to be a soldier in the Ukrainian army. So whilst it's great to have some specialized skill sets, in reality, a lot of these guys are fighting with what they've given, what they can get hold of, you know, what they can trade, what they can swap, what they're good with. So, you know, compared to the very uniform standards of other militaries, it's very much ad hoc in terms of the equipment and the training that they've got. Some of these people are hugely experienced in battle, and others were working as a software developer, and now, funnily enough, they've got an AK-74 and a job to do. So you've got units that have big variances in everything from skill set, mindset, equipment, clothing, everything. So we go there and we teach in a variety of environments. So teaching in kind of woodland terrain. So much of Ukraine is kind of thick forest environments. So we had woodland environments to train, and also close quarter building clearances as well. So lots of rubble brick buildings. Yep. Some of those Soviet megastructures in Ukraine are huge, reinforced concrete monoliths. Urban fighting in Ukraine, must be a complete nightmare because the buildings are so immense, so huge. There's such a big industrial base there as well. So you've got big factories, big warehousing units. You've got mega high rises all made out of solid concrete. It's not the kind of glass and steel that you might have in a city like London, although they do have that too. It's a good place to fight from or defend from. And so we move our way through the material. Now, teaching the unarmed stuff was very interesting because I insisted that the guys wear all of their battle rattle, so all of their gear, so their helmets, their plate carriers, their gorgets, their holsters, their magazines, their stuff, all of their stuff. And you were going to imagine that for most unarmed combat trained everywhere in the world, you've got so many things that you can play with. You can play with punches and different throws and strangles, and you've got a whole library, a whole list of things that are very, very effective. Soon as you try and do those things in the equipment, or soon as you try and apply those things to people in that equipment, it gets very, 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 very difficult. And you must really if you imagine, a lot of punching's out the question because you've got a big bloody helmet, you've got all sorts of sharp metal lumps sticking out of you, you cannot bust your hands. The target's available to you. If you imagine striking angles 1, angle 2 with blunt, heavy things, again, helmet, gear, rigs, things, stabs that go to the body, great place to stab if someone's unarmored. Again, you've got all sorts of stuff in the way. So I had to really look at what type of unarmed curricula to teach. And essentially I blended a range of materials. So I used a little bit of World War II combatives because that's very, very good for short, sharp, accurate, stunning strikes that work within the framework of body armor, such as chin jabs that come directly underneath the jaw. So these we can get away with. A little bit of my own stuff, which is predominantly boxing and judo orientated, and bits and pieces from elsewhere, but predominantly it was a World War II meets Tommy Joe Moore stuff combination, all within the parameters of gear and clothing. And these guys are also really tough guys. There's a big heritage, a big background in combat sambo. But obviously combat sambo, you're in, your kutka, you're in their version of the gi. You've got headgear on, you got your mitts, you got your shin guards. You can get away with high kicks, you can get away with big slams and throws. And it's quite acrobatic as an MMA style platform goes. Hardly any of which you can pull off wearing that gear at that weight, and hardly any you can pull off against someone wearing all that stuff. So I had to really differentiate between the stuff you do for a bit of competition that is interesting, that is useful to you, that you trust, and stuff that you can legitimately pull off at close quarters. Bear in mind that if you are using your hands at this range, it is the briefest possible time between doing that and you being able to acquire a superior weapon, be that a blade, your pistol, reacquire your rifle, beat them with a shovel, batter them with a brick, whatever. The unarmed syllabus' entire job is to put them out or down fast enough for you to get something better to finish the job. And that's the mindset I had to apply to those materials. So I really condensed the curricula down. We didn't have a huge amount of time to train these guys. So it needed to be memorable. It needed to be accurate. It needed to be physiologically devastating. So when you're hit by this stuff, there's no point acquiring points. I can't put ring craft in there. You have to smash something that is hard to, smash something which is vulnerable. And there's not many vulnerable points available once people have got all the gear on, and then acquire something better and use it. And that was the curriculum that I put in place for that. Then moving on to the blade, I took my handy little Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife because I like it and because it's cool. And again, these guys, huge variance in equipment. So some of the guys had Rambo style knives that you might get at any cheap tacky seaside town store in Britain, shit metal, shit designs. Some of the guys had some quite modern blades, Kydex sheaths. Some of the guys had old bayonets with clip retention. So when it came to the blades, one of the things I really focused on was how quickly can you access that blade. And my rule was essentially the 2-second test. If under some degree of pressure, be it grappling, striking, pushing, knocking people down, if you can't, under some degree of duress, find, acquire, draw and use your blade, then it's pointless. You might as well leave it home. For a lot of the guys, that was a relatively alien concept. A lot of the guys have, they had their knives behind their back, which were really hard to get. They had them kind of wedged in between their ammo pouches and kit. They just couldn't access it well. So I spent a lot of time in the bladed segments focusing on put your blade in the appropriate place on your body where you can access it very, very quickly. So we looked at that. Talked about what types of blade were appropriate, so making sure that the guys didn't really use folders. You don't have time to pull a folder. That the blade was of sufficient length to penetrate into the materials that everybody's wearing. Even outside of things that have got plate, you still need a blade of relative strength and length to find its way in. It's essentially like medieval armoured combat. You need a decent blade to do the job. So we talked about that. Maintenance, making sure it's sharp, all of these things. But predominantly it's about choosing wisely what type of tool you've got and placing that tool wisely on your person that matches your kit, that allows you to draw it in the fastest possible time. Then in terms of the techniques, it was all relatively simple stuff. So we focused on, again, when it was reactionary, so you find yourself closer than you plan to be, let's say you're moving around a building, how you can draw and use that blade effectively. And we focused predominantly on initial attacks to the face and eye line, followed by arterial strikes really into the throat and into the femorals. So these were kind of the main targeting areas, getting the guys good at an immediate stunning attack and getting in with something final that is arterial. So getting the guys to have that mindset. Instead of thinking of angles and techniques, it was ballistic drawing, immediate deployment, and how to make the best of your exit wounds as well. How to make sure, you don't want to be hacking away at someone with these blades. As morbid as that sounds, the guys are pulling these is because they've been smashed up against a brick wall inside a building as some Russian is trying to nut you in the head and pull out his pistol and blow your teeth out. So in reality, these guys need to be fast, effective, devastating with the material. So that's what we focused on. And again, the material for the knife, drew on a lot of sources. So drew on, again, World War II methods, because I find them very, very effective. We drew on more modern methods, such as the Libra knife fighting system, different bits of iron east, but predominantly Western platform of using the Fairbairn Sykes blade. And we looked at using it four-handed, so hammer grip, and also ice pick grip, because where the guys have it on their kit would dictate their preferred draw. And I didn't want to go there and proselytize. You should always hold it like this. You should always hold it like this. You should always do that. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that guy. Some people preferred this because of their kit. Some people preferred this. And my job was to make sure that the guys, whatever their preferred grip of that blade, they could deploy it quickly, accurately and effectively. These were the things that we really focused on. For Brett's part, I won't spend too long talking about it because Brett will no doubt cover his own content. But he's a fantastic trainer, British military, working with Serbian special forces, Israeli special forces. He's done lots and lots of material, especially at close range. So Brett was really getting the guys focusing on instinctive combat shooting. And much like the unarmed and much like the blades, it was about how quickly can you acquire that firearm, that pistol. How quickly can you get it broadly on target and get it blatting, get it shooting. And a lot of the guys, they don't get much time practicing the pistol, so they tend to over aim, they tend to lean forward, it tends to be range orientated drills. So Brett spent a lot of time looking at that. Also, again, using much of a World War II curricula, single-handed shootings for these guys. That pistol is really much a reactionary weapon, or a weapon of last resort, so it's super close range. How can they use it single-handedly? How they're opening doors, pushing bush and scrub out the way, moving civilians out the way and deploying that weapon. So single-handed instinctive combat shooting was the order of the day. And also things like high-speed magazine changes, being aware of the world around you by making sure that everything you do is close to your chest and you maintain good vision. So again, just these good hygiene, good drills, high speed draws, instinctive combat shooting, at super close range that replicates the range in which these guys would realistically be using that tool. And then again, looking at the rifle and predominantly using the rifle, how to use the rifle to move around close range buildings, so different levels of retention, different ways of slicing the pie, moving around buildings, moving upstairs, assaulting and defending from buildings. These all came as part of the curricula, and being able to transition between your long arm and your secondary, from your secondary to your tertiary, such as your blade, and if needs must, down to your hand. So we looked at rifle, pistol, knife, hand, all the way up and all the way down from both sides, because a lot of the people, they will react immediately with their hands first to acquire something better, which might allow them to acquire something better, which eventually allows them to acquire their primary tool, their most effective tool. So again, that was a key part of what we're working, looking at you are the weapon approach, no matter what you've got, whether you've got nothing, whether you've got a brick, whether you've got a knife, whether you've got a pistol, whether you've got a rifle. And again, like I said, because of the variance in weapons, that is a strong issue, because some people are trying to room clear and they've got these big bloody squad support weapons that are just not designed to move through a building. Other guys have much shorter things. Other guys have underslung grenade launchers. It's big variables of kit. It's not like modular American or British kit. It's literally like someone's got a box of weapons from the past 60 years, rumbled them around and gone, there you go, lads, pick the one you want. In an ideal world, obviously, people would have a bit more uniformity, but we don't live in an ideal world. So there's a range of different calibers, different sizes, NATO spec weapons, old Soviet weapons, and everything in between. But the guys are very flexible. The great thing about the Ukrainians is they work to the best with what they've got. So they look at what they got and they make it work. They make those weapons work. But again, lots and lots of different approaches to moving through buildings and moving through tightly packed, dense woodland. And these were the things we focused on with the guys. So, throughout the days, it was all about super close range, because that's where they get the least amount of experience, the least amount of support. As a recon unit, their ideal job is to be quite far away, send out a drone or observe things at distance and report back. It makes the most sense. But in reality, these guys spend a lot of time moving through buildings, moving in close range to the enemy. They don't have much support from other units. They're typically the tip of the spear, so they're out by themselves, and they can find themselves operating at night in all sorts of environments. So the key skill set to deliver to them was close range fighting materials. And we got some very good feedback. The guys were very honest. There were some things they liked, some things they didn't like, some things they'd like to do differently. But that is their prerogative, because these guys have been at war with the Russians for longer than any of us. So they know what they're doing. So it was our honour and privilege to suggest and showcase and provoke some thoughts and provide some new rationales and new techniques and principles within that close range fighting matrix. And that's exactly what we did for a range of officers, trainers, soldiers. It was, a broad range of people that we're working with. I won't name the unit, but this was their lovely insignia, which I'm very proud that they gave us their patches for. So that was a really nice gesture on their behalf. And I'm especially proud of this from the commander. So we've got our Archangel here, which he took with him in the Battle of Mariupol. So again, very, very proud of these patches. And we developed a really good kinship and relationship with the guys. It's difficult because you're working in another language. These guys, 2 or 3 of them had a smattering of very basic English. We had translators with us, but you never know what's being lost in translation. You can't observe the group dynamic. People digging it, are they not digging it? It's hard for you to suss out. You have to be much more aware of the body language. You have to essentially learn, how these guys respond to things. But we got there and we earned their trust, and we showcased a lot of the efficacy of the materials. And it's our job really to showcase, if we're showing you something, it's got to be faster. It's going to be better than what you already do or you already know. What's the point of us? So we had to prove it on the job. They're very much a prove it culture. We do it. We recommend this. Prove it. Is it faster? Is it better? And we'd have to do that. And we did, which was a really fantastic experience. Food was interesting. I can't say Ukraine's going to win any culinary awards anytime soon. We were quite lucky in that we got officer food. So in the barracks, especially, we got officer food. But it's predominantly like oats, millet, lamb. So you'd have a breakfast and it'd be like a pile of fish, like warm porridge with lamb on it, some bread and honey. And you're like, what do I do with this? Psychologically, you are not prepared for this onslaught of very strange, very weird foods. But lots of stews, lots of millet, lots of oat. But there was lots of it and it was good. Not much coffee. I was expecting lots of coffee because normally it's a coffee culture. I think there might have been shortages. So you find yourself in front of, on tables with commandos and you're all drinking warm milk or like weak peach tea, which is quite strange. But actually it was quite good. It was quite good. But yeah, the guys, the morale was excellent. They are willing to fight to the death. A lot of these guys, they're not necessarily originally military guys. Some of them have been serving a while, but for many, it's their first time doing this kind of stuff. And it's you really feel for them, but all of them are passionate in their defense of their home and their loved ones, which is fantastic to see. That they will not give an inch. They will not. You can see it in their eyes. There's steel in there. Some of them are only 16, 17, 18, 19, and they've got, some are stronger than others, some are weaker than others, some are a bit dopey, some are really sharp, just like any other group of people. But all of them have this rock solid love of their country and what their country stands for. I can honestly say to any conspiracy theorists out there, you're absolutely wrong. I didn't get a shred of anything like Nazism or anything like that. These guys just care about their country. They don't want Russians attacking their people. They just want to live a normal life without the threat of Russian occupation. And these guys will fight to the death for it. And I really believe they will win. As a boxer, when I look at people, you know often who's going to win. And when you look at the Ukrainians, they're going to win. They've got the bottle, they've got the passion, they've got the belief, they've got their love. They will make the Russians pay for every square inch that they would ever take. So, absolutely brilliant morale. The guys do need Western support. They do need extra help with training because it's hard to train that many people without sacrificing your more experienced soldiers from the front line. So that's where people like me and Brett come in. There's big groups out there. There's big American training groups and there's big Canadian training groups and British training groups. There's the Foreign Legion. There's all these people trying to do their bit, and Ukraine has to try to manage and modulate, NATO standard, non-NATO standard, Ukrainian drills, probably old Soviet Russian drills, all these things together. They have to kind of mush and make the best of. But I think that really that mongrellism is what will make Ukraine very strong, in that they get the best of all these different facets. But we were very proud to be part of that training experience and give them those hard skills. And it was great for me to try and, showcase historical things too. A lot of my shtick is World War II combatives. And it was brilliant to see how well that ports into modern life. It moves into that sphere of close quarter combat really well. Some of the things against a completely unarmored opponent, there's lots of other things that we know about now that we can do now that might work a little bit better in some instances. But with the soldiers in their gear, with their equipment, with the limited time you have to train these people, they don't have time to become experts in, butterfly sweep. So they don't have time to become experts in all these different variants of strangle. They've got time to learn the bare basics and learn how to smash, crash, stab and dash. And that's what we really focused on. How to make the most of the limited time frame, the limited attention that they can put on this stuff, and make it high retention, high return on investment material. And that's what we looked at with them. It was hard on the buses and the coaches, because on the buses and the coaches, you see the women, you see the moms, you see the wives, you see the daughters, and in some areas they can come back and see them, but the men aren't allowed to go. So we got to see that perspective as well. These families that have been broken up and splintered all across Europe, and you really feel for them. There's a woman traveling by herself with big luggage cases and 2 kids, and she was saying if they had a 3rd kid, the husband might be able to leave the country, but they only had 2, so she'd only be able to see him a week since the war began. Just 1 week, 1 week of those children seeing their father, 1 week of that wife seeing her husband. You know, there's mothers and nans and grans. There was old ladies bringing their cats, you know, with them to go see their sons, and knowing that that might be the last time they ever see their son. So it was, it was very moving to see the love that these people have, the love that the families have to go back into the danger zones and take what time they can with people. But it's very difficult. It is an arduous journey. It is long. It is fraught. For many of those guys, it can be quite expensive. You know, you don't get much assistance, much help. There are nice volunteers on the borders that, you know, will give you some soup and some toys for the kids. But a lot of the borders as well are really tense. You know, the Polish border guys, because they're under so much extra workload, like, they are not happy or nice people. They're not. They are angry people. And so you got these moms and nans and cats and kids and angry border people, and it's taking really long, and everyone's really stressed and angry, and some people are sick. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot emotionally, and you see the toll that it has on people. And that moved me a lot, seeing it from the soldier's perspective, you know, how passionate they are about defending their homeland and their freedoms and their principles, but also the battle that the mums, nans, aunties, uncles, granddads, they're all fighting too, to survive, to thrive, to support, to keep on living and loving and helping those people. You know, it's very difficult. And my heart really does go out to them. So we offered what training we could, and, you know, we showcased a lot of material, and we helped give the material that they could readily cascade to others, because the whole point is we can't always be there. We've got normal lives to live. So a lot of our stuff was, this is how it works. We want to see that you're good at it. And then we want to also help explain to you how to best teach this to others, because that's the best multiplying effect. If Ukrainians are teaching Ukrainians, it's the best possible transmission of knowledge. So we spend a lot of time focusing on that. But like I said, you know, it's a country at war, and we're teaching there, and, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're thinking, fuck, am I going to die? Am I going to die teaching this stuff here? You know, different times of the day. You know, you see bomb damage, blast damage, tank traps, pillboxes, all of this stuff everywhere. You know that there's a heavily armed country, a big tier 1 player, you know, a couple of miles from you, that is angry. And every time it's losing a little bit, it gets angrier and more chaotic and more despotic. And you're like, shit, I could die for this. And that was very new, and that was very scary for me. But that's also makes it why I was glad to go, because I was fucking terrified. You know, I'm not from a military background. That's not my shtick. My shtick is unarmed and cold weaponed combat. That's what I'm good at. That's what I'm good at. I'm good at teaching it. I teach it all the time. I do it all the time. I've got a pretty good reputation in that space. But I'm not a fucking commando. I'm not a Navy SEAL. I'm not Rambo. You know, I'm a guy that works a normal white collar job in advertising and marketing in the Midlands in the UK. So when you're in bed or when you're teaching and you hear fucking woo, and you've only ever heard that in World War II films about the Blitz, and you're thinking, I could be blown to shit here teaching throat chops and chin jabs and strangles and eye gouges. I could be teaching this shit while cruise missiles could blat me from the sea, from the border, from anywhere. You get blown up by artillery. Some cheap Iranian drone blasts me to smithereens. You know, so it was quite scary, but I will say that you get used to it. Like, it put the shits up me the first couple of times, but after a while, then you're just like, fuck you, Russia. I'm trying to teach here. Fuck off. Get your own. Yeah, this is my timetable. This is my slot. It's my bit. Move on. Jog on with your attacks. And you do get a bit that way inclined, and you see that nonchalance on others. And obviously, you can't be too nonchalant. You can't be stupid. But, you know, I do feel that you do get used to it. But it does fucking put the shits up you. So my respect to everybody out there. And, you know, this is even scarier, I suppose, for me, because for a lot of people, they're used to being the tier 1 outfit. If you're the British, if you're the Americans, if you're the Canadians, you're the guys with the missiles and the boats and the planes and the helicopters and the snipers. You got all the cool shit, you know. In Ukraine, we were like the fucking Ewoks in Star Wars. Like, we're like the little furry people with random weapons, and fucking the Imperial forces are landed with all their Gucci shit. You know, that's this scary, scary stuff. But I'm really, really, really glad I went. I'm really glad I went and managed to share what I can within the frame of what I know and what I'm good at. I'm glad I could share that, and that resonated with the guys. They wanted to test it, they wanted to try it, they wanted me to try it with them. But as soon as they saw that it worked and it's operable and they could make it work, then they start to dig it. And I was really proud of that. That was really affirming for me to see that this stuff in the Crucible, by people that have been there at the pointy end, they dig it, understand it, and see its value. So from all that unarmed combat that I've woven in, all the use of the blades with my trusty little Fairburn Sykes by my side, all of that stuff they found good uses for. I should hope that they never have to use it and they can spend their lives relatively safely within the realms of the conflict. But if they do, if anyone gets within 2 or 3 meters of my lads, they'll wish they hadn't. And so I'm very, very proud of them. They're a fantastic group, fantastic morale. They worked really hard. They train really hard. They want to be the best, you know. They really want to be the best. They don't want to be fucked with. They want to be strong. So with the equipment and parameters they've got and the training they've got, they are rock solid. And I'd say on behalf of Brett and myself, it was an absolute honour to teach them. I think both of us wish we could do so much more. There's only so much you can do if you live a normal life. It's not like we're a private military company. It's not like we can go out there and do this as our job. But with the parameters of what we were asked to do, what we were invited to do, we went there and delivered it. We had some really good feedback, really good experience. The guys really resonated with it, so I was really proud. And I would have to say that I have no doubt in my mind that Ukraine will emerge victorious from this conflict. Those guys, they've been through hell. They're fighting hell. But by God, they are tough, hardy, stout, full of passion, fire, belief. And absolutely, they will not give an inch. They will overcome the issues that they face. So yeah, teaching in a war zone, it's different. It's scary. It's dangerous. Your adrenaline is going through your body. You're worried about being blown up, being eviscerated by thermobaric missiles. At the same time, you've got a job to do, and you've got to land your teachings, land your messaging to a skeptical audience, make them believe, make them understand, make them familiar, and then make them be able to teach that to others. And that's what we aim to achieve. So it was our honour to support these guys on this mission to keep themselves safer than they were before. And I think that is a mission accomplished. But the fight's not over. So these guys, if you have any ability to support, whether it's in humanitarian aid, fundraising, skill sets, the guys need it all. They need trainers, they need teachers, they need kit, they need gear, they need all sorts of stuff. So if you'd like to support, I'll put wherever you see this video a GoFundMe link so you can support financially to Vans Without Borders, and those guys will be getting the kit out there. Brett and I did a really big kit assessment of the materials they've got, everything from winter boots, socks, eye protection, tourniquets, fighting knives, everything from military style aid to humanitarian style aid. We've catalogued some of their main requirements that they've got. They've got excesses of some stuff and big deficits of other stuff. So a lot of those funds from Vans Without Borders will go to getting the right gear to the right people as they find themselves in that winter conflict. So that'd be a great way to support. There's also a Fighting Chance DVD. So before the seminar, to fund some of us going, to make sure we weren't a drain on the Ukrainians, we put together a seminar, a World War II combative seminar called A Fighting Chance. You can buy that, and the proceeds of that will also go there. So you can donate directly, or you can buy the seminar. It's 4 or 5 hours worth of cool stuff that you can enjoy. So either way, you'll find the links to those things. But suffice to say, God bless Ukraine, God bless its soldiers, and God bless its people. They are fantastic, and I am very, very proud to say that I played a small part in helping them do what they need to do. So thank you, Ukraine, and you will overcome. I have not a doubt in my mind. Bye-bye.